Jetpacks Radio, programming for the open mind.
And welcome back, everybody, right here to the Paranormal View on the Parax Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. Those here in the chat room, those listening from around the world, we appreciate each and every one of you. I've got a great show going on tonight, and I want to welcome back Barbara. Maybe.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah. And speaking of listeners from around the world, where do we have listeners?
All over the United States, Canada, and Great Britain.
Well, that's good countries anyway, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
But no dark side of the moon. Ah. All right. Want to welcome back Jeffrey Gould.
Hello. You're listening to Pink Floyd. Yeah.
And our great guest, as usual. He's just like a regular member of the show, though. Mr. Thomas Wertman.
I'm back, and I didn't spill my cup of coffee in the back way back this time. My dogs appreciate it, especially since the coffee maker's right by them.
All right, I had a question from a person in the chat from Tabby, and she wanted to know, with all the information that is supposedly available on UFOs, why isn't there much on the photos they have taken of the dark side of the moon?
Dark side of the moon.
Yeah, that's what it says, dark side of the moon, with supposed space stations.
Good question. If you want to go on the conspiracy side, you go, I say it's something they're covering up. But on the other hand,
there's some really good high def pictures of the far side. No,
yeah, and the question is, why aren't they coming out showing something? I mean, today I found where they actually had a picture from the Apollo back when the one astronaut hit the golf ball back on the Apollo landing.
Mm-hmm.
They had one of the original pictures they analyzed. They found the golf ball only went like 40 yards or something like that. It didn't go the distance they thought, but you've got these high-resolution pictures. But why aren't they bringing something out? And it could be maybe there's just nothing there. I know I've had somebody showing me pictures that they've gone back and reviewed that they've had questions on what they're seeing, that, you know, there may be artifacts there. No, I've got a reasonable background in photo analysis on there, especially 3D stuff. And some of the stuff I see, I'm just questioning, but, you know, I just want more information, you know. Exactly where it's at, and you need somebody also to look at it who is familiar with, like, formations, geology, like from like meteor impacts and so forth on there, what can be created that way, beyond my knowledge. But the biggest thing is sometimes maybe there's not as much there as what some people think. That, you know, maybe they're not seeing that much there on the dark side. Well,
it's the unsheltered part, right? So you'd expect more meteor bombardment. Regardless of that, so, you know,
exactly.
It's pretty darn active.
Yeah, exactly. You'd expect a lot more, you know, meteor showers and so forth on there.
I know Jeff's always hollering because we say the dark side of the moon. It doesn't mean that it's dark. What it is, it's on the far side to where we never see that side. So that makes it like dark to us.
Exactly. Exactly.
I know the first part of that show that we've been talking about, they were talking about the Nimitz when the pilots first come in contact with these spaceships that was just fast. And they, I guess, locked in on it with their little thing, and they had it on there for maybe 15 seconds, and all of a sudden it just shot off and disappeared. Now, I guess when they come back to the ship, of course, they had to confiscate all that video that he was taking. And the guy who was in the control room that was in communication with the pilot was telling all this. And he said a few days later, these guys come on the ship, landed on the ship in a big helicopter, come in, confiscated all the video and audio of this, and left. My question is, if every time something like this happens, they confiscate all this video and audio, how is it that we're seeing it on TV?
Well, the video you saw, it's been out there quite a bit. That was some of the initial stuff that came out, and it came out kind of like in a unique way. There's maybe some confusion, different interpretations on how this all came out, but one of the stories was that the way I see it is Luis Elizondo, when he was involved with the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program at the Pentagon, the videos kind of came through and they got released. Well, reportedly they had been basically vetted and released on there, Henry, saying that, okay, they contain no information that wasn't sensitive, anything that could endanger our national intelligence. They'd been vetted and released that way.
You couldn't see anything except a little dot on a screen.
Yeah. You saw a dot. You could see some information on the fighter's instrument panel regarding altitude, airspeed, and so forth on there, whether they were using the FLIR, whatever, You could see basic pilot information, but they'd blocked out a bunch of the other information, reportedly. Well, the paper I saw, the document I saw, basically interpreted those were for internal use only at the Pentagon, not to be released to the outside public. Well, they got to the outside public anyway. And, there's different ones that say, yeah, they were cleared. Other ones that say, no, they were cleared for internal use, but nonetheless, they got out to the public. And the crew, some of the crew is saying it's the exact same videos that they saw. You get some other stories where, the video we saw was something like you saw on TV, except ours was clear. That I'm not sure about. Again, all we have is the crew stories in that case. But basically, what they saw was like you say, the image that was in front of them, and the image goes zipping off to the left-hand side of the screen. Well, one of the pilots that was involved with that, his name is David Fravor. He's now retired. He said that that's what caught him as unusual, is the speed that the thing left the area. Now, he was not the one who recorded it. As a lot of stories come out, he was on one of the earlier flights. And what happened is the crewman you were talking about, there was talking about the films and stuff being confiscated. One of the other ships involved was the USS Princeton, which is a guided missile cruiser. That missile cruiser basically had some of the most state-of-the-art radar systems of any of the naval ships in the region. They were out doing basically a shakedown exercise, a training exercise, objects for like 2 weeks before this whole thing went down. They'd been seeing the objects flying not one at a time, but multiples. And what you weren't seeing in the video is there was actually more than one. They kind of described it as being like a whole fleet, meaning basically you may have had up 5 up to 10. Well, these objects were being seen, tracked at 80,000 feet, coming down to about 20,000 feet, then going to sea level. Well, when they'd been tracked for this couple-week period, one of the individuals that you're talking about on board the Princeton, he asked the captain, maybe they should look into this. Now I'm thinking, why wouldn't he have done this earlier? But basically, when they were tracking stuff, the way it appeared is you see something going from 80,000 feet to 20 down to sea level in a matter of like 1 second. You're thinking, we don't have anything that travels that fast. So it can't be anything that exists. It's got to be a radar glitch or something else. It can't be anything, they don't look at the UFO side necessarily. It's just that we don't have anything in an ordinance that travels that fast, so just kind of ignore it. Well, on this given day, they'd happened for like 2 weeks. One of the crewmen said, "Hey, sir, why don't we scramble a couple jets since they're out in that region? They're doing training exercise. Let's just kind of divert them over to that area where we see these objects at on the screen." So that's when they guided Commander Fravor, who was actually the head of the squadron. They guided him over along with his wing person, and they were coming in right around 30,000 feet. As they come in, and I'm going out of memory here for 30,000 feet, as they were coming in, they're approaching the target area where the UFOs are being tracked at, and they're picking up nothing on their radar. The Princeton is tracking them, but they're getting no other tracks from any other aircraft in the region. Like there is a E-2 Hawkeye, which is one of the big radar dome planes. They were not able to get as good of a track on it as what the Princeton was. But here it is. Here's a radar plane, but it had, I guess you could say, maybe older technology on board. They weren't tracking it as well. So the Princetons who guided the crew in, as they approach, they see nothing. They're getting like a countdown. You're 10 miles out. You're 5 miles out. Then they get a notification that they merged with the target, which means you're occupying the same space except a different altitude. Fravor looks down and he sees a disturbance on what appears to be a disturbance on the water. So he decides to kind of like do a circular motion, descending down to investigate. And the wing person stays high at about 20,000 feet. So he's going down. And as he's going down, he sees disturbance on the water. He sees what he describes as a tic-tac, a white object. And this is where they were tying this together with the show I did. The object kind of comes up from the water, and it almost appears like it sees him coming down, so it goes up. And they're both doing like a circular motion. And one is on one side of the circle, one's on the other side of the circle. He's descending, it's coming up, mirroring his pattern. And then he decides to cut across the circle. As he cuts across, this object just takes off like crazy. And he says, disappears over the horizon in a couple seconds. It's gone. Completely gone. And he goes, well, we don't have any moves that fast. Well, he didn't have the FLIR camera systems on board his aircraft to photograph it. Well, after this event happens, he goes back to the carrier. Another crew goes out, flight crew goes out. And he tells them, and they're prepared, and they have the FLIR technology on board their aircraft. They're the ones that actually captured the video on a later flight. So the video you see on TV is that later flight of the object being seen and it just shooting off at a distance.
So how many objects were they able to see that was flying around there before they all shot off?
They tracked the one, but if I remember correctly, you're looking at, they said over the 2-week period, they tracked roughly about 100 objects.
Wow.
In groups of about 10, if I remember correctly. So it was almost like a fleet. It wasn't one or two, it was a group of them.
Do you
taking off at a distance.
Do you think they had a base under the water, or
well, that's one of the speculation. Yeah, that's a speculation of that region because they're out in one of the island areas, which has a high number of incidents of UFO sightings around the region.
Is that like Catalina?
Catalina Island is the one.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a number of UFO incidents in that particular region. Now, that region is also, by the way, where they're at a military operations area, where they do conduct training exercises on a regular basis. And when we were talking earlier about, the videotapes and stuff disappearing, after this whole thing went down, again, you're getting reports from different crew members and stuff on there. Reportedly, on the carrier, they came back and they got the recorders from their aircraft. because they said like when the E-2 Hawkeye, the one which didn't track it quite as well, they're designed to be kind of like almost like the quarterback, monitoring everything going on, directing stuff and so forth on there. But since they couldn't track it as well, the Princeton took over, but they would have had recordings of everything going on, which would have been the audio recordings of all the conversations. They would have had their radar data and anything else that, their systems were capturing. Well, they said when the aircraft came down, the data recorders, which are kind of like hard drives in a computer, were pulled from the aircraft, and they're stored in a safe. Well, they said it was only a few hours after they landed, and they stored the data recorders in a safe because the crew member said, hey, I was the one who had them. I locked them in a safe. He said the next thing you know, a couple guys show up with some of their ship personnel, and they said, we want the data drives. And they said it appeared to be the individuals asking for the data drives were Air Force, not naval people. And normally they sign off when anything is being taken like that. Well, they got permission to take them, and they didn't sign off personally for these drives. They just got the drives. Somebody else signed off, and they were expecting to see them back, and they never saw the drives come back again. They were gone. Now, who knows where they went to? Who knows what happened to them? You could speculate and say that, okay, maybe they pulled the drives to look at the radar data by, let's say, more experts, somebody maybe that had more ability than the personnel on board the ships. But the ship's personnel was saying we were fully capable of doing that, but the drives disappeared. Now, they may have ended up at, who knows, maybe a company like Raytheon. Raytheon is the one who manufactured a lot of that equipment out there. Maybe they were looking at them closely and getting their opinion. You can only speculate at that point what happened to them, Henry.
Right. Yeah. There's so much out there on all this stuff now. Why are they still so intent on trying to keep everything hushed and tell us that, no, we don't know anything?
Well, some is always you want to keep a potential foreign adversary off balance. You don't want them to know what we know, because what if these aircraft are being, operated by a foreign power? You don't want them to know what we know about what we're tracking, because they may think that maybe a radar system or some aircraft that they have can avoid our radar, but we don't want them to know maybe how good our radar systems potentially are. Well, so it's putting out, it's keeping that information private.
I tell you, if they got something that moves like that, the radar ain't going to mean a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's almost like when the Enigma computer was able to decode German messages, they had to let certain attacks go through so that they didn't realize their code had been broken. That's
right. You just don't want them to know what we really know. That could be one thing. And again, that's just, going back to speculation there, Henry. That's maybe why, but something I'm curious about is in January, when that, stimulus package went through and the government funding money went through, did you know that there was money funded for the UFO research that was tied into that?
Well, it also forces the military to disclose, right, within 6 months?
That's right.
The Military Disclosure Act?
That's right, because what this new group is doing is they're doing UFO research, basically, and it's, in this case, the program they're putting together is really looking at it from like a defense side. But they're supposed to put out a report every 180 days. In this case, 180 days on different things going on, that the research that they're doing. And this is designed to be in the report. Now, the question is, you've got that 180-day period. How much information is going to be passed on? Because what they're supposedly doing is going to look at stuff coming in across the different military branches You've got potential information coming in from the FBI, and it's going to be coordinated by like the Office of Naval Intelligence, that they're going to be compiling all this information besides putting all these people in positions. They're going to put a report together for the Senate Intelligence Committee to give them information on what is going on. So we'll just have to see how really open they are, how much they really divulge, because I don't think it's going to be a program like we think of, like maybe like a Project Blue Book, where a sighting comes in, a report comes in, and then investigators go out. I don't think you're seeing it like that. I think what they're going to be doing is collecting data. That, okay, we've had these incursions being monitored. These incursions, let's say, for example, are off the coast of California. They happen on such and such a date. We have this radar data, and the radar data reportedly, anything like that is reportedly to go into this database where it collects everything which can be shared between the different agencies. So what's supposedly going to happen, it's different this time around, rather than like, let's say, for example, like Project Blue Book, if a report comes in from the Navy, the Air Force should be able to see that information that has come in, at least that in theory. So the information comes in, it says, okay, the Navy saw one on this date, the Air Force can see it. Maybe you'll see what radar data they have and everything else along with that. So you've got sharing of information across the board. At least in theory, that's what's supposed to be happening. So we'll just have to see how, what they really go into. I don't think it's going to be investigations unless, let's say, for example, maybe if you've got a number of incidents happening in a certain region, that they see it as being a point of national defense. That's when you'll probably see different groups going out, at least more information from groups going out to do investigations.
So there's still going to be quite a few filters.
Yeah, there's still going to be quite a few filters on there that the general public is not going to see information that can be any danger to national defense.
Right.
All they may see is that there are incursions out there. They may see eventually maybe some videos, something like you saw before, but you're not going to see in-depth information, I don't think, by any means.
All right, I got another question from the chat room. It's from Tabby, and she said, according to the TV show that was out recently with relatives of Marcel over Roswell, and others are coming forward to admit they too had knowledge of the Roswell incident. If people were threatened to keep their mouths shut back then, how are these people able to come forward now? I would say because they're older and they don't care.
Well, yeah, but a lot of the Roswell witnesses are now gone, and you're down to, like in Marcel's case,
relatives.
We were trying to arrange at one time Jesse Marcel Jr., the son, into coming in from one of our conferences in Ohio, but he got sick and he couldn't come in, and he passed away not long after that. But we had his grandson. So now the problem is you're getting like third generation. You're getting stories passed down, and one of the questions I have is how accurate those stories are going to be. Are you really going to hear something you never heard before? Or are these stories going to be misinterpreted, misconstrued, whatever, as time goes on? And who knows, maybe right now you may find out that, like, the government may not be as interested in them telling their stories, because what if they look from the point of view like, okay, this has been like 70 years now. They may be like looking at the information, how accurate it is anyway, how valuable the information really is. I mean, you're not seeing the evidence coming out. You're not seeing the parts of the craft to really give, to me, substance behind that story. All you're hearing is just the same stories passed down.
Well, I assume the bodies were taken back to Wright Pat What about pieces of the wreckage? Where do you think it went?
I would think the same place to a degree. I think a lot of stuff would go back to Wright Pat at that time. And they still may even be there, Henry, not that far from you.
Nope.
You know?
And
They still may be there because to me, I mean, I've always said this for years. If you got something back, let's say in the 1940s, if you want to take and reverse engineer, it's going to take decades at least to reverse engineer a lot of this stuff, even begin to have some knowledge of what you're looking at. So put it below ground, you bury it basically so nobody can get to it. So you put it in underground systems, you restrict who can get into these underground systems to the nth degree, and that gives you time to go back and reverse engineer this stuff. So if you put it below ground, you create even it's like building the boat in the basement. You don't have you're not going to get it out.
And booby trap it like that roadway under Skinwalker Ranch that everybody's having trouble getting to.
Yeah.
Just putting it out there.
Just putting it out there, right.
And probably also out there at our secret base that we don't have, too.
Area 51.
Yes.
That's right.
There was a great joke out there, and that was it's not Area 51 so much that's concerned, but the fact that we have 50 other areas that nobody's talking about.
There you go.
Yeah.
But it just happened to be the number on the map.
Got another question here. Says it's from Patsy, and she says, "Don't you think that somewhere someone has a piece of that wreckage?"
You know, you would think so. That if you had 1 million pieces out there, that at least one piece, you know, has to be someplace. You would think. The question is where.
Plus, if anybody has it personally, I'm sure they have it well hidden so that it doesn't get scarfed up.
Oh, well hidden, and who knows? Let's say, for example, if somebody found one back then, 200, Jeffrey, they may have never told a family member.
Yeah.
So I just think of them passing on, and here's this box with this piece of metal in it wrapped in a rag, and somebody sees this and just throws it out, you know, not knowing what it's related to.
Well, you got to think that aliens that was visiting Roswell, you might say, so many hundreds of years ago, you see how much progress we've done since Roswell. How much more has the aliens done with their stuff?
And that's a good point, because you would think in 70 years, they would have, let's say, for example, it's like you look at the early days of the radar system. One of the theories is what basically knocked down maybe one of the craft out in the Roswell area was somebody high-powered radar systems we're developing at the times. I mean, before that, you didn't have it, so now all of a sudden they're encountering this high-powered radar system that may have taken them right out of the sky. Well, you would think that over time they would have said, okay, we'll keep tracking this since there's an issue with this, and we have to find a way to either not have them track us like we do with stealth, or make them so they don't affect our craft, and they would learn from it. The same as they would also learn about our other capabilities besides like radar. You would think that they would try to find some way to block that stuff, or so they can't be tracked by it.
I think that
would think.
I think that they probably have done that until just recently.
And then we improve. I mean, they've got the newer radar systems out now, and reportedly one of the things that I saw not long ago is they're even testing out a newer system than the one that they had with David Fravor with the Nimitz. They've got a newer radar system they're checking out now, testing out in the same region.
Why do you think that there is more activity out off the west coast than anything off the east coast or in this area.
It's a good question. Maybe it's just that we've got more areas, and maybe we're tracking it better out there. I mean, we tend to pick up the stuff off of like I believe off of North Carolina, Virginia, down into that region, down through the Bahamas. And it could be that's where we've got a lot of the, I'd have to look at a map and see if that's where a lot of military operations areas are where we're tracking this stuff. And it could be the same with like the West Coast, that we're picking up a lot of stuff in the military operation areas. Now, I haven't heard anything out of, I'd be curious about Seattle to see up in that region if they're tracking stuff too. Now, the other thing is maybe there's something unique out there in that region, Henry, that I'm not aware of.
That's possible. I've heard that there's underground bases out there off Catalina.
Yeah, I've heard about the underground
ocean.
bases.
Yeah.
And then you've got Jeffrey out in that region too.
It was like not Santa Monica, like not Monterey. I know there's supposed to be some weird flat area that with almost columns underneath that submersibles can go down, but it might be too deep for divers. But it's just off the coast, and a lot of people think this looks artificial.
San Diego, isn't it, Jeff?
Is it San Diego? Okay,
I thought it was San Diego area.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure if it was north or south of me. I know Josh Gates has been down there and such like that. So
in San Diego, that would put it out in the military areas again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be the biggest reason why is there may be something unique geographically with the underwater terrain.
It's warmer.
Warmer, maybe the depths.
You don't have to worry about having to crack through ice if you're in a USO. In a submersible UFO.
Not like up around Alaska, huh?
Yeah. Probably why Lake Erie doesn't have any underwater bases.
Well, they're so shallow. Now, there is a guy who's got a book out on that, though. Yeah, along the area that, there's a lot of underwater. But I'm like, a lot of area around Lake Erie is not that deep. One of my friends has a condo up around what we call the islands around the northwestern portion of the state, and you can walk out quite a ways before it's going to get over your head because the water's that shallow out there. And that's why the lake gets dangerous when the winds kick up, because the waves can come up so quick because it's so shallow.
You mean like choppy water that'll peep over?
Yeah, choppy water, because back as a kid, we used to go out in like a 12-foot boat, which is not a good idea, because when the weather changes, it changes quick. And the heights of the waves can pick up really fast and take something like a 12-foot boat under.
Yeah.
Wow.
I want to be on a 3-hour tour for that.
No.
Well, you figure it's interesting that they would be so close. I mean, if they can travel light years to get to Earth, they can surely travel, say, from the depths of the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic in no time at all and still not want to be detected. So at some point you have to wonder just how worried they are about detection these days.
And that's true, but sometimes I just wonder, too, how much, how many sightings are really happening underwater? How many times they pick up something on, let's say, sonar they can't explain. Mm-hmm. That's moving at high rates of speeds, because one of the things in connection with this Nimitz case is that the object was coming out of the water. And there had been not only objects tracked above the water traveling at high rates of speed, there had been objects tracked below the water at speeds that our craft aren't capable of. So here you've got an object.
You need a lot of power to go through water, even more than air.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. But one of the things that I was bouncing off a friend of mine who's got a background in submarines I said, what if they've got a way of basically breaking the resistance of the water ahead of them? Almost like forming a cavity that you're going through.
Well, isn't that along the lines of the concept that around the skin of the ship, they're able to produce almost like, not a force field per se, but energy that would push air and or water out of the way, like you say, out of the way.
Right.
Like a
so
vacuum.
that there's no friction and no inertia. You can make those right angle things without, becoming squishy inside the ship.
Exactly. And maybe that's how they're capable of moving at these high rates of speed.
But you got to figure out what's propelling them to be able to do those high rates of speed. And having to turn so quickly and stuff like that. We couldn't never survive anything like that. So you got to wonder what their makeup is with their bodies.
Yeah, makeup of the bodies, or are these basically like drones?
Could be.
That are going around unmanned.
Yeah, because even the quadrupeller drones that amateurs have can suddenly make sharp right angle turns and such.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, there was a great one I saw the other day, mentioning the drones, getting off the subject here a second. One of the things, remember, Barbara, we talked about in the past was the drone activity out by, or not the drone, but the flying person that they were seeing out in California.
Right.
The other day, I found this great video that showed somebody who'd built a drone, like the ones you're talking about, Jeffrey, except it had a human body to it. And coming off of where the shoulders were like the propellers and stuff. And this thing had to be about 5 or 6 feet tall, and the guy was flying this thing around.
Oh, you mean an actual person, not like a cardboard cutout to make it look like a flying human?
It had clothes and stuff on it. It was like a mannequin.
Oh, I see.
But it looked extremely realistic, and he said it would only go for about 8 minutes.
Well, they did that back when the movie Chronicle came out. They made these drones that made it look like the teenagers that were flying. And they did that as a publicity stunt for the movie when the movie Chronicle was coming out.
Okay. Yeah, this one, I'm trying to find a link. I'll send it to you here, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
I'll send it out. But it showed this guy flying this thing, and I was just cracking up laughing at this. I'm thinking the whole time, I got to have one of these.
I got to have one of these.
Well, I think they arrested the guy who was doing that at L.A. airport, if I'm not mistaken. They finally caught him. Yeah. He was flying in a jetpack.
Oh, he was. That was a real person then.
That was a real person on that jetpack.
Yeah, there are these prototypes that I haven't seen them in years, but they're like these mega fans on either side that apparently are able to lift people off the ground. But I haven't seen them referenced in 10 years or so. But they were pretty popular for a while.
I just posted the link out there for you of the video.
They're in the chat?
Yeah, I just put it in the.
It's here on with us, Jeff. Look on Skype.
I see the links Barbara put in for the. Not seeing, unless it's some else place.
I didn't put it in the chat room. I just put it on the.
It's on Skype.
On Skype
in our chat.
Yeah.
The last time I saw somebody with a jetpack was they were at the Super Bowl, wasn't it?
I think it was.
Back in the day, yeah.
Back in the day.
When we were still doing when we were still doing the whole "we're going to the moon" thing.
Oh. Wow.
But I'd like to have one of those drones that look like the person. I think that would be great.
Well, build one.
Remember, I'm on a beer budget. I'm retired.
Oh, yeah, beer budget. You got a lot of beer cans in, don't you?
I used to do that.
Have you made any more robots lately?
Oh, I've been working on the robots. I've got a couple of them I'm working on now. And some of them are getting more elaborate than ones I had in the past. A lot more computerization to them, which is slowing me down. A lot more servo motors on them. And it's just a matter of getting the code right to make them work.
There's an amazing amount of technology coming out now with AI. I was reading articles quite a bit. There's robots that will load the dishwasher, pour you a glass of wine, clean the house.
Oh,
It's getting really amazing
need one of them.
To see what's out there.
We're almost catching up to the Jetsons in it, the way it sounds.
Pretty much.
I just need them to be able to let the dogs out and take them for a walk. And
It's a pity the fighting robots and BattleBots cost so much to make.
oh, you mentioned I got hooked on that show the last couple weeks since we're kind of locked in. And I started watching the episodes of the BattleBots, but you're right. I mean, I don't have a sponsor like they do.
oh yeah.
But it is such a fun show. It's so ridiculous and silly.
And those bots are really quite brutal, whereas you can have one that will, pour you a glass of wine and, load the dishwasher for you, which is much more practical.
Oh, yeah. And when I see parts flying off a robot, that I'm assuming that the protective glass they got up is like Lexan.
Yeah.
You see a piece of metal that got hot enough to melt the Lexan, and it's impregnated into the material.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Wow.
not only is it shooting off sharp shards, but they're hot enough to melt the plastic.
Yeah. And
Right.
The other night I was watching one where a shrapnel actually hit one of the cameras up in the corners.
wow.
I missed that. I got to go back.
Did you see the one where a lucky shot hit the a fuel tank, the fire fuel tank, and it exploded?
Yeah, I saw that. And I'm thinking, and here you have gas canisters of some sort on board those things.
Oh yeah, they have propane and all sorts. Whatever for those fire breathers are just awesome.
Fire breather.
Yeah, and when you see this thing shooting up in the air like 8-10 feet
Yeah, the flippers. Yeah.
off an impact,
Wow.
and then you realize how heavy those things are on top of that. That's. But yeah, I've been working on those, Henry, and not to that degree.
Oh.
Mine, I don't want to see blow up. It
No,
drives me crazy when I see a motor or something go bad.
I wouldn't want to spend all that money to build something like that to try and destroy it. So
No.
it takes too much. It sure does.
Yeah, but sometimes they'll do behind the scenes, and they have like testing, like a testing cubicle, as it were, and they demonstrate just how powerful some of these machines are, whether it's to crush or strike if they have rotators, and it's just amazing to see the kind of damage. I mean, they're just designed to destroy the other. I mean, we all did that as kids. We all destroyed our toys, pretty much.
Oh yeah.
Smash our toy trucks into each other.
But then you think that somewhere down the road, NASA's watching this going, well, we could use that and we could use that. Because when you look at these rovers that are going up that need to crush and analyze rocks or, go through different terrains on Mars or the moon, some of this stuff is really quite practical.
Oh sure. But I love though, Jeffrey, when you get the person coming out that it's kind of like they're walking out, they're strutting their stuff down the walkway. They've got their chest all pumped out. They think that this robot they created is so fantastic. And here, all of a sudden, you see this person out there like me with the beer budget that like built this thing, on a shoestring, and it stomps a robot. You got to admit that is great.
You see, some of them get destroyed within 30 seconds of being in the ring. It's quite amazing.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I know. If you get a lucky shot, it's gone, and somebody's like, "Whoa, that was fast!"
No,
and
that
someone
was
just
fast.
the
No.
difference. It keeps clamming each other, and it's just silly.
My wife asked me. She says, "Could you build something like that?" I said, "Yeah, I could build something like that." And I said, "Possibly just as well as what they are, if not better, because I do have a background in a number of the things that they use, like the hydraulics, the pneumatics, and stuff like that, along with the electronic side." I said, "Yeah, I could do something like that, but I just couldn't see going out and tracing out like a $20,000 robot, that you put all that work in."
Well, you just have to examine the robots that are there, certainly the ones that do the most damage, and figure how to deflect those. And a lot are modular. They'll come in, they'll realize, oh, they've added a wedge because this particular robot they're up against is able to do this, and that will slow them down or make it more difficult to inflict damage.
Well, yeah,
I want to see one with a battle bot with a battle bridge, where the top of it could actually separate off the battle bot, and then you could go after it with a double whammy.
Well, there are robots that, like Gemini is a pair of robots, and they team up.
Or just build one with a bazooka on it.
Well, they actually had a robot that was deliberately disqualified because he knew it was against the rules, but he had like it shot a net over the other robot, and it's not allowed to do that.
See, I remember years ago, MIT used to do this thing where they had a contest. It would give two teams, or give all these teams a bunch of components in a box. All of them got the same components. And they had to compete against each other in different competitions. And the one year was just something simple like, here's this table full of ping pong balls, and they had to compete against each other and see who could get the most ping pong balls off the table. Well, the guy who won only got one ping pong ball. Because what he did is he created this arm that shot out fast right when they said go, and it stopped the other robot from coming out. And all it had is this little scooper that scooped up one ball. That's all it needed to win. And like you say, it's an ingenious idea.
Yeah, smart.
I thought, what about something like that can create like an electromagnetic field that it comes out and it basically blows the other one's computer out.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sort of a Kobayashi Maru.
A secret weapon.
But they probably can't do that.
Yeah.
All right, we're down to about 3 minutes. So if you got one last question real quick, send it over to me ASAP so Thomas have time to answer it. Because we're almost out of time. Appreciate it.
How has your checking out Cryptid Goblins been going?
Cryptid Goblins?
Didn't we discuss that about some sort of goblins in Kentucky you were checking out?
Oh, that was actually an old case we might have talked about sometime in the past. There was an older case in Kentucky that involved like goblin-like creatures. And that goes back to, what, 1950s is the one I'm aware of?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
The Hellier Goblins, where they came out, attacked the farmhouse.
Yeah, because I've got a 3D print of one of the goblins in my office.
Didn't they have a big gun battle there?
Yeah, supposedly they had a gun battle where they saw this goblin-like at the front door of this house that was kind of like remote. And they shoot at it, and the thing, supposedly they hear the impact of the shells hitting it, knocking it off the porch. The thing gets up and runs away, and then they hear the things crawling on the roof. And it sounded almost like a Twilight Zone episode, basically. The things are crawling off the roof. The family members come out. They're shooting at it. Eventually get to the point they hop in a car and take off, and then they call the police up. But here there's questions when you read different stories about it. Some are saying it wasn't a firefight like they were implying, of gunshots everywhere, shell holes everywhere. And one of the stories is they may have been shooting at an owl that they saw outside.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was Kelly Hopkinsville.
Yeah,
the
that's
name.
what it says.
That was the one, Kelly Hopkinsville. As a matter of fact, I was in a meeting one time when one of the witnesses was there talking about it. And she was like a child back then. And she was basically describing it like almost like a firefight.
Wow. Yeah, that's what they said. It was Kentucky Farm, the Sutton Farm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To a kid, it would have been a firefight. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. All it would have taken is to me a few gunshots, and next thing you've got a firefight going on.
The poor owl was just telling him not to pollute.
Well, that was one that when they did the Project Blue Book series, they kind of brought part of that into the Project Blue Book series.
Yeah.
Wow.
Also, too, Henry, they did actually release a number of other CIA documents related to UFOs.
Oh, really?
Of which there isn't really anything out there. I pulled a number of them up. And some of them mentioned that so-and-so was on a TV show in England talking about UFOs, and that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Only a couple of them that I actually see where they said, well, there is like a UFO that crashed like in Czechoslovakia, and all it was is like a 1 or 2 word statement, nothing else.
Right. It was like 6,000 some odd documents.
Yeah. And they're actually posted on a website called the Black Vault, run by John Greenwald.
Yep.
Yeah. They can be pulled up.
All right. We're down to less than a minute. I want to let Thomas give out information where you can follow him real quick, and then Thomas can stay on until after we're off, and we'll talk with him. And next week we have John Ventre, and maybe we'll find some stuff out about Hangar 13. Go ahead, Thomas.
Okay. If you want to reach to me, you reach out to me through MUFON Ohio. On our website, we've got a link back to me. Also, if you want to contact me directly, you can go to mufon.twertman, that's WERTMAN, @gmail.com. That's my direct email. Well, right now, I'm not doing anything else, Henry, other than basically staying, as we call it, hunkered down.
Hunkered down.
Hunkered down.
Yep.
All right.
As we are.
With that, I want to thank you for being with us tonight, and stay on. We'll talk with you when we get off here, and we'll see you next week at the same time. So this is Henry Foister,
Jeffrey Gould,
and Barbara Duncan.
So see you next week at the same time. Good night, everybody. You've been listening to the Paranormal View on the ParaX Radio Network. Join us again next week at the same time for more of the Paranormal View.